how can you help people realize that there's a problem worth solving, right? How can you help those developers even find that problem in the first place, which is a fun challenge, right? So case studies are great. Head-to-head comparisons work really well. Find word of mouth is usually the most effective, but to get word of mouth, you have to earn those recommendations. So you have to all in your power to make sure your users feel supported the entire time, and it's not just sign up for FusionAuth and sayonara or ciao.
All right, we're live. I wanted to start a minute early because I already saw a bunch of folks joining in. I want to make sure that they're not uh, spending too much time in the waiting room. So while we wait on the rest of the folks to join, who has already joined, go on ahead and let us know where you're joining from. I'm joining from sunny India. I say sunny even though it's night because that's the ambient temperature most of the time. We have Blair with us, we have Vikash backstage. So I'd love to hear where all of you are dialing in from while we wait on the rest of the folks to join in before we get started.
Sweet. Yeah, I'm coming to you guys from a little bit gloomy today, Denver, Colorado, but it's a nice change. It's been really hot here. So, as we like saying in Colorado, we need the moisture.
Awesome. All right. Great. So for the folks who are on time, we'll respect the time and get things going. Welcome everybody to Masters of Revenue, our virtual summit. So this is the second edition. Our first edition was about ops folks sharing everything that they've learned, in their experience, where they've built really great ops organizations and what they've learned and what we can take away from that. We're in the demand gen edition, and we here we're talking with practitioners in the demand generation world, where they share with us real experiences from the reps that they've put in the field, and especially given the times that we're in. 2021, 2022 was quite crazy. You could burn as much as you wanted, as long as you're growing. Now things are getting a little grounded, back to reality. So we want to talk to experts who've been there, done that, to understand what tactics still work, have stood the test of time. And in that sense, today's episode is special. And I couldn't think of a better way to end Masters of Revenue Demand Generation Edition, because I have with me Blair, who's built demand at FusionAuth. And what's special about it is Blair's built out the demand in a bootstrap organization. And some of the numbers that I saw on LinkedIn were crazy. So Blair, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself in FusionAuth and we'll get into it.
Sure. Thanks, Chara, for having me, first of all. So, as Chara said, I'm Blair Ewalt. I'm marketing manager here at FusionAuth. I'm from Denver. I live in Denver, in Colorado. I'm working from my home office today. So, as you can see, I'm a big fan of sports and golf and the outdoors and kind of surrounded by things I love. So, it's a nice place to work from. My role at FusionAuth as a marketing manager is focused primarily on demand gen side of marketing, and my day to day is comprised of paid advertising across search and social channels and other placements and ideation and creation and implementation. And I also have my hands on with some event planning and other marketing operations. And as a quickly growing company, it's easy to have your hand in a lot of cookie jars, and there's a lot of new opportunities and things to do day after day. So it's cool. I've been in the tech industry for almost 10 years now, and I've had roles in sales and marketing through all that. And I really love marketing because it's a great opportunity to be creative and innovative and provide business value and return on investment. So thanks again for having me, Char.
Yeah, of course. And next time somebody says, hey, it's just marketing, right? That's the set of responsibilities you need to remember, right? So, Blair, before we get into the topic, do you want to quickly introduce FusionAuth? Because your ICP is probably the hardest to market to. Just would love to hear a short intro about what FusionAuth does, and then we'll get into the magic that you do there.
Sounds good. Yeah, FusionAuth provides authentication and authorization and user management for any app. So we like say that we're auth built for devs by devs, and we have a rockstar team that has built software which can easily integrate with any language or framework, and it can be deployed anywhere in minutes. And I mean anywhere. Like you can self-host it in your existing on-prem infra, or you can deploy it in your cloud or our cloud, and when you download FusionAuth, your copy is your own. So you're able to control your own data and your own security. And so we work with all sorts of industries, and we have all the bells and whistles that you may want and features like MFA, passkeys, one-time passwords, advanced threat detection, so on. So it's great. And our team's super well versed in complex auth scenarios, and we're striving to make login and authentication and authorization and user management awesome. Kind of like a pun, like awesome, for everyone and our end users.
Great. And it's always fun following the FusionAuth page. I've seen some of your CTOs posts. Taking on some of the big players out there, saying, "Hey, FusionAuth doesn't have this. FusionAuth does this wrong." So it's been fun following along, which gets me to what was top of mind when I invited you on to this session, right? Like we sell to marketers, right? Marketers, in some cases, sales folks, demand gen folks. And our life is slightly hard in the sense that there's only so much fluff we can pull off in our marketing activities because we're selling to folks who can easily snip that out. But when I think about your ICP, developers and CTOs who need to pull the trigger on a product like FusionAuth, I can't even imagine how you get their attention because my CTO is probably one of the hardest person to try to get on a sales call, let alone go through marketing material, right? So, given that most devs prefer self-serve and make decisions by themselves, free trials, how have you managed to build demand for this audience, and how do you think marketers should approach this category?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's a great opportunity and challenge. And we've seen developers don't like being marketed to. I was at a developer marketing summit in March, and I heard someone say, "If you're not a developer, you have no right to be marketing in this space," which I thought that was pretty blunt take, but it's true. Developers are super problem oriented people, and problem oriented people are looking for solutions over all else. So if you're not front and center when they're looking for that solution, how can you expect them to know about you? So that kind of raises a question of how can you be there when there's a problem to be solved? And in my mind, that comes down to knowing your customer, knowing what they're looking for, interview them, learn how they found out about you, learn why they chose you, and then capitalize on those things to help make you different in messaging and content and etc. And that way you can prove yourself to be more than an expert, but also a partner, right? And then you can take it one step further and you can ask, how can you help people realize that there's a problem worth solving, right? How can you help those developers even find that problem in the first place, which is a fun challenge, right? So case studies are great. Head-to-head comparisons work really well. Find word of mouth is usually the most effective, but to get word of mouth, you have to earn those recommendations. So you have to all in your power to make sure your users feel supported the entire time, and it's not just sign up for FusionAuth and sayonara or ciao. We really love to work with our customers and help them because in return it helps us make our product better as well, and it lets them create a better user experience for us and for them. And also it's really helpful for us. We have a free community edition, so we let the developers get their hands on the product and figure out if it will work for them.
Mhm.
And that can work pretty well as a demand tool because it allows our target market of developers to spin the wheels and try it out without paying. And our community edition is forever free, so can help them build a better login experience that can take months or longer to build themselves, and then they have to maintain it on top of that. And then, as you mentioned earlier, with kind of memes and all that, it helps to be yourself and be funny and nerdy. So we use a lot of memes in our paid advertising just to be a little bit different and give people a chuckle. And then
Mhm.
hopefully that way they remember you a little bit more than somebody who just put out an advertisement that says authentication solved or something similar.
Yeah, makes sense. I think knowing your ICP really well, and in your case, maybe understanding the tech world or the world of developers definitely helps. Thank God I'm not marketing to developers because I was once told I know enough code to just be dangerous and break things, nothing beyond that. So I stick to marketing to marketers. That seems to work, right? So you mentioned that there's a community version of the product, which I'm assuming talks to developers in that they prefer self-serve, so they get to use your product, understand the product, probably talk to their peers, get a little word of mouth going, and then do they still have to talk to a salesperson before they're able to purchase, or do you let them also purchase by themselves?
We do have a self-serve option available on our website. However, we find sometimes with really complex use cases, it can be easier to talk sales and make sure it's right fit for everybody.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, makes perfect sense. Um, so, and all the things that you mentioned, and one of the things that really caught my attention when I was doing the research for this call was uh, for your fundraise, you'd mentioned some stats, right? And one of that was that you had a 350% increase in revenue in just 18 months. That's a stat that not just Bootstrap folks, like any VC funded company would also be proud of. So what I really want to understand is what's different in a bootstrapped organization when you're trying to generate demand, right? So because it's not like, hey, we can do a $50,000 experiment on Google Ads, figure out if it works, and then move on to the rest. So how do you think about it in a bootstrapped organization where you need to be really considerate about because it's the revenue that you generate, I'm assuming, goes back into all your marketing efforts. So just talk through marketing in a bootstrapped organization.
Yeah, definitely. I'm being at a bootstrapped organization is it's great. I mean, but it's challenging. And the biggest constraint of bootstrap growth is kind of efficiently using the resources that you have available. So you have to be really strategic with your spending and try to determine, okay, what's going to have the biggest business impact? And that's not always, spending money on paid advertising. Sometimes it's people, smart people who can help deliver value in your product and making your product better. Sometimes it's events, and it can be a little bit cutthroat trying to figure out how you want to build positive ROI. But as long as you have an end goal set, it makes it a lot easier to prioritize.
Got it. Makes sense. So, like I mentioned, right, there are some things that would have been okay a couple of years back when it comes to generating demand and creating pipeline, right? Like you mentioned, host an insanely huge event, for all your prospects, and not be able to measure the ROI on that and just call it brand spend. I don't think a lot of those things fly anymore. In a lot of these hours, you have CFOs questioning every product purchase decision, every marketing decision. So on those lines, Blair, when you think about marketing efforts, how do you think about the fundamentals which you've seen working through the course of your career, where hey, these are the fundamentals of marketing and demand generation that just don't change, and startups need to imbibe, in 2024 and moving forward.
Yeah, I think it's really important to keep that bootstrap mindset. And it's kind of the same things as everybody else. Don't hire till you're ready to hire, till you can afford to hire. You'll be resource constrained by not having enough people while you're growing. So you need to get creative with the best worth and time of your money and your money. And I would say in today's environment, you're still trying to build while being cognizant of the fact that you still have to be really money conscious and not spend it all on crazy stuff like offices and swag and stuff that's not really imperative to you doing your job. Because what you can end up with is a whole lot of people who kind of don't really know how to run a company. So keeping that bootstrap mindset and hiring the best, the smart people that you know you can rely on and they're willing to have their hands in all sorts of cookie jars and bring that bootstrap creative mindset is super helpful. So we feel good about the company we've built, and we continue to invest in our product and everything else we believe will follow. And so at the end of the day, I think everybody wants to be a success story. And so by building a strong ecosystem internally, you can continue to harbor that success.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. I think the bootstrap mindset in itself is slightly alien to some folks in the VC backed world. It just like, "Hey, why can't I spend on this to uh, generate demand, right?" So on those lines, one of the things that was really interesting was when I search for like a UUID generator or a lot of things associated to authentication, I noticed a lot of FusionAuth content show up, and content has always been even for us a good driver of pipeline, right? So talk to us about your free tool strategy, because I'm assuming developers love trying before buying. How has that worked out for you? What are some of the experiments you've run with content and with free tools that developers can use?
Yeah, you mentioned our UUID generator, which is a free tool we have on our site. We have a couple of free tools available. And we have kind of tried to milk them for everything we can and see if we can get more SEO behind it. Because another free tool, which is great, is Google Analytics. And you can look at it and say, okay, what is most effective in our marketing? What's driving people to our website? What are our best traffic sources? And why? Why is it the most effective? So it's super helpful to question everything. So we saw a lot of traffic going to our free tools because it's a free resource and developers find it valuable. So we try to raise our SEO through long tail keywords of driving people to those pages. So now I believe when you search UUID generator on Google, we show up in top 10, which is great. Um, I think it's really important if you're going to invest money into a tool, it needs to be able to pay you back in multiples. So you need really strong ROI on any tool. And I think Revenue Hero is a great example of that, which to us proved immediate ROI by shortening our time from inbound to meeting of qualified leads by over 10x. I don't remember the exact number, but it's really valuable. So it's that, especially with a bootstrap company, is so imperative to be able to prove that ROI. But there are other tools like SEO, which you can try to use as a free tool to get in front of developers when they really want to see you. So SEO has been a really valuable free tool to us, and there's a lot of tools tacked onto it that aren't free, like SEMrush, which can help give you great keywords, which you can continue to build on and grow on. You can do something similar in Google Ads for free. If you
Mhm.
go into a campaign and type in a few keywords, it can generate similar keywords that it sees as valuable. So that's another kind of free way to do it. But on the other side, yeah, providing free options and free trials and letting people try it out for themselves can be super valuable.
Awesome. I don't know what the rules of the marketing world are, but I'm going to try to figure out if we can change this call into a case study snippet, because I don't think I'll get a better version of that, right? Awesome. So, Blair, one of the things I noticed also was that the UUID generated content was really comprehensive, right? And my non-developer brain, couldn't comprehend it beyond a point. Given that like you put it right, like FusionAuth is built for devs by devs. When you come up with content like this, how do you manage to get your developers to chip in and do they write the articles themselves, and then do you edit it, get it, normal human being ready, or just talk us through the process of how you generate content for devs with devs on the other side? Feels like a really hard juggle to manage.
Yeah, and it can be, especially with time constraints, but we have a super technical team and our marketing team is great as well. And our DevRel team is also amazing. So together we have a good mix there and being able to provide things that developers would want to see. And I would
Mhm.
say, just kind of tack on that, there's advantage to being an expert, but you don't always want to advertise yourself as the expert. You want to be more of a partner and help people solve their problems because partners can grow together as a friend and a resource, which in turn kind of helps build your reputation.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. So I know that you mentioned developer relations briefly, Blair. So when it comes to channels of pipeline for you, right? This is something that I always wonder. Do you see developers and decision makers in your ICP hanging out in LinkedIn, or is it more of like you mentioned, communities and these DevRel folks helping conversations going in different parts of the internet to then bring them into the FusionAuth conversation? Where do your ICPs live, and how do you get to them?
Yeah, they definitely, a majority of them are on LinkedIn just for job purposes. You can find a lot more and have better conversations at in-person events like hackathons and big meetups. A quick plug will be at AWS reInvent. So if you're there, would love to say hi. Um, but in person is great. I'm There's a lot of people that pull from our GitHub repository and sit within our forum inside of the FusionAuth community, and those are good people to talk to. We also have a FusionAuth Slack, and in terms of reaching more developers, there's other developer Slack groups that you can join. But it's always good to be cautious because, as we've kind of explored, you don't really want to advertise to developers too heavily, or else they'll just want to throw you out the window.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So the other thing that I saw on the FusionAuth website was very detailed documentation, right? I'm assuming apart from the SEO, given that FusionAuth in itself is a technical product to implement, do you typically see conversions being influenced a lot by your help docs, your APIs, your SDKs, and how effective has that been, and how do you track that?
Yeah, it's a great challenge. I think that by having that technical documentation, you build a lot of trust if it's right, right? So you need to constantly keep it updated. And as people want to have more features in their product or anything similar, that's kind of when we get into scaling part of it, which is okay, now if you want this bell or this whistle, then come talk sales. So it's been helpful in that. We also use an AI tool on our website, which skims through all of our docs and allows people to figure it out on their own. As part of that, there are certain calls to action implemented in there that say, hey, if you're looking for this feature, if you're doing this, then maybe just talk sales or talk to our experts because we're all developers. So we can really give you technical answers to the questions that you have.
Got it. Great. So Vikash has questions of himself, given that he's also a fellow marketer. I think he's getting very curious. So, how effective has Reddit been for you as a channel? Vikash used to run, or rather, market to developers a few months back, and Reddit was huge. How have we seen it work well for you, and how should a marketer think differently about Reddit versus LinkedIn? Of course, if you use or leverage Reddit as a channel.
Yeah, we used to leverage Reddit super heavily.
Mhm.
It's great if you can get creative with it. So, in my mind, Reddit advertising works super well because you can pinpoint individual communities or keywords. Um, but more, it's better for brand awareness. So, there's a lot of broad sort of awareness plays that you'll see on Reddit for, truck companies or chip companies and stuff like that tends to be better just to keep your name top of mind.
Mhm.
However, for a technical product, we didn't see the best conversion rates from Reddit. We did see great awareness, however, and a lot of traffic to our website from it. So we did that by putting memes out there instead of typical ads. So Reddit's great for reaching people when they're out of the office. Hopefully everybody's not sitting there at the office browsing Reddit. And that's probably not the most effective use of your time. But when you're outside the office, Reddit's a fun place to be. So we try to hit developers with memes instead of just implement FusionAuth today. and by doing that, similar to doing it on other channels, hopefully we're able to leave a more lasting impression,
Mhm.
which in turn, if somebody goes back to work the next day and somebody says to them, "Hey, we need to rethink our auth," they say, "Oh, wait, I just heard about this Fusion auth," something
Yeah.
like that. So that was kind of our strategy around it and how we approached it. And overall, it's great for awareness. However, conversions from it were not the best. And part of that's probably because people are out of the office at the time that they're browsing Reddit. So it makes sense.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, it keeps FusionAuth top of mind, and eventually they end up Googling or talking to someone about FusionAuth and end up in pipeline, right? So the other question was, how much of a content strategy is driven by the community, right? Given that you have a community of developers, right? I'm assuming a lot of questions come up from there, a lot of topics are discussed. And how do you keep the community engaged to feed your content strategy, right? Because it's easy to start one, really hard to maintain one. So I think a couple of questions. How does that affect your content strategy, and how do you keep them engaged with your content?
Yeah, it's great to kind of scour the internet and say, what are people saying about us? How are they talking about us? What questions are people asking about authentication? What don't people understand? What do people understand? What are builders saying? And then based
Mhm.
off of that, try to figure out and pinpoint the best pieces of content that you can produce to effectively bring in your audience. So that's a big part of it is, social listening on Reddit, on Twitter, and Slack communities in our own forums. And if there's a recurring issue or if a GitHub issue is start to the max and you say, okay, well, either it's a problem with our product or it is something that people don't really understand quite how to use it effectively. And so by generating that awareness about the best ways to use it and the best sort of recommendations around it, you can help build a lot of content that way. And then that content in turn can end up producing a lot of valuable engagement, right? Because if that's what people want to know, then that's why they've come. And as problem oriented people, you've provided that solution. So
Awesome.
that's that's a great way to kind of do some free marketing there.
Yeah, that's great. So, folks, if you have more questions, just pop it into the Q&A box so that I can put it up on stage. So, Blair, while folks are thinking about the questions, I know that for a lot of marketers, video is working out well as a channel. Do you see that being true for devs as well, or is it still like the GitHub documentation, GitHub, and all the technical stuff? Or have you experimented with short form, long form videos, and does that work?
Yeah, we find that videos are great for trying to prove your value, right? So there's a lot of different ways to do that. Like TikTok's one example, and you can take a 10-minute long video of somebody talking about why your product is super effective and then chop it up into an infinite amount of content, right? And then continue to reproduce that on your social media and hope maybe one day you'll go viral. That's kind of the fun of putting stuff on social media is you'll get a dud, then another dud, then another dud, and then all of a sudden something will stick, right? And you'll get 10,000 views on it. So it's always best to be creative with whatever you're doing, I would say, and try to use as many different outlets as you can to convey the message that you want to convey.
Yeah, makes sense. So, in the last few minutes, Blair, you've mentioned quite a few channels, tools, right? AI on your documentation, etc. Right? So, talk us through your tech stack, right? I know that Revenue Hero already got a shout out. So, how do you do social listening, documentation? Like, what tech stack makes FusionAuth or FusionAuth's marketing run today?
Yeah, so in terms of marketing, we do analytics through Google Analytics. We use Revenue Hero, as you mentioned. We use SEMrush to find more keywords and more long tail keywords because SEO is so powerful. However, there's so many big players in the market, right? It's such a saturated market in the tech world that we're probably not going to beat out Microsoft on the term authentication. But if
Mhm.
somebody says how to implement a SAML provider or something like that, then that's a long-term keyword that you can be front and center on.
Mhm.
In terms of other marketing tools, we use Kappa AI on our website, and that's our what skims our docs. And that's been a great tool. Our docs themselves, I'd have to double check with our team, but it's all home built using frameworks. I believe it's built in Astro, but it could be wrong. Um, and
Awesome.
yeah,
Great. When you're speaking, talking through the set of tools, right? I couldn't help but think about how I make myself look smart in front of developers, and sometimes our customers and our technical questions come up, right? Uh, like a couple of years back, if somebody had asked me why this code isn't working, I'd have probably had to nudge my developer friends to give them an answer. Today, I just go to ChatGPT, copy paste the order they sent me, and I appear smart, right? So I'm sure that um, there's some impact of tools like ChatGPT, Claude in either accelerating marketing for a company like FusionAuth, Blair, or making generating content harder in some areas, right? Because folks just go to another source to get the answers, right? Have you seen tools like this have an impact in marketing for developers in either sense, right? In that it makes life a lot easier for you, or that you probably now have more competition. So, how do you think about that?
yeah, it's interesting because in our mind, it's kind of how do we use ChatGPT to generate new leads and new inbounds. And so part of that comes down to the content that you produce, right? And Google does not promote ChatGPT generated content. So you can't use it to write your content. You need to write it yourself. However, you can use it to write a broad outline of maybe here are the things you can touch on. And then on the other side of it, since ChatGPT and all the other LLMs are just, kind of regurgitating the information that they take in, then by giving good information, if somebody goes in and searches, what is the what is the authentication platform that's going to make my life easiest, something like that, you would hope that it lists you as one of the 10 or something along those lines. So we find it be a valuable tool, and it's kind of been a fun challenge of how can you juice it, right? How can we be in the conversation when people want to ask the questions?
Awesome. Great. I think we've also been trying to figure out how to get ChatGPT and Claude and the Bing AI to respond with Revenue Hero all the time. We've not yet figured it out. Eventually, will. So I also you mentioned AWS some briefly, Black. So what is your event strategy like? How do you think about in-person events to drive demand? Because you can't just show up there, scan a bunch of leads and call it a day. uh, so do you come up with first off, how do you get developers attention at these events, and then how do you measure performance of your event strategy?
Yeah, so for the attention part of it, that's being very well polished on your product. If you're doing some sort of giveaway or something like that, that can bring a lot of people in. In terms of gauging ROI, it's very difficult because you don't know, and are we going to get leads out of this? So you have to kind of set some targets and then hope to hit them. However, if you have some data from the past, it makes it a little bit easier to set those targets and those baselines. We love to give out shirts, like the one I'm wearing. So these are really comfortable and serve basically as free advertising. So if
Mhm.
somebody's walking around in our shirt and they say somebody walks up to them, hey, that's a cool shirt. Where'd you get it? Then that's a nice plug for us. And also just having great conversations and proving the value of our product is really the main thing and the main reason you go to these events, right? And yeah, same as everybody else. You want to use those events as an awareness and a lead generation tool, and it's best to measure it by ROI. However, sometimes you need to model that out a little bit to try to figure out what those goals you need to hit to reach that ROI will be.
Got it. Makes sense. So on those lines, Blair, the T-shirt is a great idea. What are other quirky ideas that you wanted to implement or have implemented that you've seen have great results or just seen out there in the marketing world? So one of the memes that I still remember was the one where folks are at dinner and one of those folks are holding the dog's mouth, and that meme will always stay on top of mind. So, what are ideas like that that you either executed or wanted to execute or explore?
Yeah, a quirky campaign idea. So we do the memes. We like to keep that brand voice of, being kind of funny, kind of snarky. And so earlier this campaign, we ran earlier this year, sorry, we ran a campaign around World Password Day. And World Password Day was created by Intel in 2013, I believe, to raise awareness about password strength. So our messaging around it was more passwords or history, and we built out a web page talking about the history of passwords and why we believe the future will continue moving away from passwords for more secure methods. So to promote that, we created a pretty scrappy game show called Hack'em, which we promoted on YouTube and to our email database with a really catchy intro, so people didn't just automatically skip it. And we had hackers hack into wealthy folks' banks and socials and kind of ruin their life, drain their bank or get them canceled. So it was a lot of fun. And overall, it was pretty low investment. We promoted that video on YouTube ads or Google ads through YouTube. And I believe we only spent a few $1,000 on it, but YouTube video ads are super cheap. They're not great for driving real engagement. But I
Mhm.
think with that campaign, we generated 1.15 million impressions and 30,000 people watched the entire video. And we brought something like 12,000 new site visitors. So overall, it ended up being fun and a great awareness play. And it was super cheap.
Yeah, that sounds great. I think, did you have to, given that it's going to be a YouTube ad and you need to get folks in the middle of them consuming content that works for them, was it like really high production quality? Because you mentioned that the cost was really low. So how did you go about it? Was it just like a iPhone on a stand, or did you actually have to rent out like a studio to get it done?
Yeah, we did an iPhone on a stand with a green screen and some microphones. So kind of keeping that bootstrap mindset. The production value is not great. I edited it all myself. And so we ended up having just a ton of fun with it. However, you don't always need super high production and to spend a lot of money on stuff like that. There's time and a place for everything, right? So this whole campaign was just supposed to be fun and informative. And we felt like at the end of the day, we drove a lot of awareness and we kind of achieved our goals with it.
Awesome. Um, so while we were discussing this, Blair, one of the things that I was thinking of was um, I kept thinking about developers as your ICP, right? Folks who make the buying decision. For slightly larger orgs, or even for some companies which have a slightly heavier product influence, I'm assuming you also need to convince the product managers and heads of product to make the purchase decision. Whenever you have more than a single ICP involved in buying decisions, it's actually it gets more complex as a marketer to try and convince them, right? So how have you seen that play into your deals, and how do you make sure that you convince the friends of your ICP as well, so that they don't come in at the last minute and say, hey, what is this product? I don't get any of this.
Right. Yeah, you need different messaging for everybody. So with developers, it's one thing. With product managers, it's another, product owners, and with CTOs, and maybe something totally different. So with the developer, we lean kind of heavily into get your hands on it, spin it up, play with it. And then we hope that can move up chain a little bit. With product owners, we say stuff that's more product oriented, right? So, how can this help your onboarding experience? How can this help your UX and make your end user's life better? And then, say, with the CTO, we could say, reduce the time and money that you invest in your own authentication. And so, with those different kind of tiers of messaging and targeting through different channels, whether it's LinkedIn and targeting directly job titles, or Reddit and going directly to, certain subreddits, you can kind of figure out what messaging works the best. So in doing that, I usually, and our team usually runs a whole different bunch of messages at once, and then we'll kind of pull them back one by one and figure out what messages work most effectively, and then we'll share that internally so we can continue to grow on that messaging, build on that messaging, and use it not just in our ads, but in our content and everything else we do.
Got it. Makes sense. And whenever we talk messaging, we talk specific audiences, I can't help but bring up the ABM question, right? Do you run ABM campaigns for specific companies that you want to close? How do you think about ABM, and like how should other marketers approach it?
Yeah, I think ABM is super cool. It's not something that we have gone down the complete path of implementing yet. We do have a head of partnerships, which does more of our ABM stuff. However, I've seen some really cool ABM campaigns in the past, such as I'm trying to remember who it was, but somebody put up a billboard out front of somebody's office, and that level of I walk outside and I can't get away from your company is kind of intrusive, but also keeps you totally front of mind. So I think there's a lot of super creative ways to do ABM. However, at this point, I'm not the biggest expert on it.
Yeah, no worries. I just like to get everybody's opinion to form like an educated decision, right? Uh, Heard of it, done it, thinking about it. I think all of those opinions are useful, right? So, um, Blair, you mentioned that you've seen some inspiring campaigns. So, where do you go for marketing inspiration? Like, do you have a set of resources, communities, people you follow? Like, who are the shout outs you want to give here, product people, communities, so that we can all go, learn from uh, your recommendations?
Yeah, there's some Slack groups that I like for developer marketing. There's developer marketing Slack. There's Online Geniuses. There's Developer Marketing Alliance. I really spend a lot of time getting inspiration from Twitter and find Twitter to be super useful. And also on LinkedIn, you can look at all of your competitors' advertisements. And so you can kind of ask yourself, okay, what are they doing? Is it working? Is it not working? Should we be doing something similar? And that's helpful as well. And all that's public, which is great. But it's interesting because it's kind of small ecosystem we're in. So you always got to keep your eyes open to people outside your ecosystem and say, wow, that's a cool ad. How could we do something similar? Look at the way they drove engagement. Is there a way we could do something similar?
Awesome. So, slight change of pace. Just going back to your ICP and developers, right? So you said that you have self-serve, community version of the product. One of the things that got me thinking was your users, or your product users, probably live in their terminals, right, in VS Code. So how do you track product signals to understand if somebody's used your product enough to be activated for them to have a conversation with sales? Like, I can't even put my finger on how one would approach it, especially when dev folks are probably living in their locals and in their terminals. So do you track any usage signals? If yes, how do you do?
Yeah, the main usage signal we track is downloads.
Mhm.
Since our product at this point is pretty much you own your own copy, and you have total sovereignty over it. So we don't sit and track your usage heavily like that, unless you tell us that you want us to, pretty much. And so downloads are our main source of information, and pulls from GitHub and similar. It is always better to have better product telemetry. However, it's not kind of our main focus right now.
Got it. All right. Great. So, folks, if you have any other questions, now would be the time to add them to the Q&A section. We have about 5 minutes left. So we just got a shout out to dev.to and Hashnode as great communities, right? So I see you nodding along, Blair. Like, have you had a chance to interact with those communities? Have any feedback?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can only rattle so many things off my head at once, but Dev 2 and the hash node are amazing. Medium's also great, and there are a lot of great people on that. Um, and then what is Daily Dev is also another good one. So it's a browser extension which kind of provides a lot of different pieces of content that you can go and see there.
All right, awesome. So let's quickly just check if there are any questions. Just a second. Okay. All right. Yeah. So, given that we're speaking of communities, Blair, I'm sure like you just can't escape hacker news if you're in the dev community. Have you seen hacker news be successful, drive traffic to FusionAuth? Have you been involved in trying to, you know, leverage hacker news as a community?
Yeah, it's great to listen to people and hear their feedback and say, very, very truthfully, hey, I work for this company and we might be able to solve this. And then get that sort of feedback loop going. When we produce valuable pieces of content, we'll put them there. But Hacker News is so developer focused that they can sniff through any sort of kind of self promotion and stuff like that. So you want to be very informative and not very marketing first on the Hacker News.
Yeah, makes sense. I think I've seen a lot of famous last words in Hacker News with folks trying to promote themselves and then, get an earful from everybody around, right? Kind of to end out the session, Blair, now that Fusion Arts transitioning from being bootstrapped for a significant amount of time to now being funded, what changes in your mind from a marketing perspective? Like, are there new avenues of investment you're thinking about, or is it just a little more comfortable? Or like, what changes in the world of marketers when there's funding in the picture?
Yeah, I would say as a company, it allows us to fill in all of our gaps first and foremost and hire the people that can help grow us most efficiently, right? So I would say that was pretty much the first thing that we looked at and getting the right people in place so we can grow, but grow effectively, right? Because at the end of the day, you still want to keep that bootstrap mindset and you don't want to overgrow either because that can be a pitfall for a lot of companies. And then in terms of marketing, it's expanded the budget a little bit. So it allows us to look at new avenues and new sponsorships and partnerships. There are a few newsletter sponsorships that we've been able to explore that were previously out of the question. So some good sort of newsletters for developers would be there's a lot like language specific.
Mhm.
There's some sort of like JavaScript Weekly, and I think a company called Cooper Press runs a lot. Bonobo Press runs a lot. Bytes is a great one, and then there's the bigger ones too, like Byte by Go and TLDR. So it's always great being able to explore those and see if they'd be effective options. And at the end of the day, it is about ROI. So with that money, you just have to keep that bootstrap mindset and say, all right, is this going to provide the goals we want it to provide for us? Is this going to achieve what we want?
Got it. I heard TLDR in there. Shout out to TLDR, another hero customer, right? So, which again, TLDR is a great source of information, whether you're in tech, whether you're building product, right? So, similar to that, Blair, are there any secrets that have worked out for you in terms of a marketing channel, like something that you just didn't expect to give you so much ROI, but you tried it out and then just turned out to be an amazing surprise? I'm guessing memes is one of them, but are there any others?
Yeah, I think you kind of took the words out of my mouth with memes. I mean, they've just been so effective and they're fun, right? Lighthearted, and they get people to at least raise an eyebrow, and um, that's great. And then other than that, it can be pretty traditional. But memes have really I could write a whole blog on memes and our meme strategy, and there's room to grow from it too, which is great.
Awesome. So where do you go for your memes so that I can have a cheat sheet for myself to pick them up? Is it just Twitter scrolling? Because that's my strategy for memes. Where do you go for yours?
Yeah, Twitter has the up-to-date ones, right? So there's always new meme formats coming out. Um, I usually just go to like a meme generator
Mhm.
and I'll sit there and I'll just kind of click through them like what would I put here? And then I'll run them through my or run them by my team, and I get feedback, either hey, that's kind of funny, or hey, yeah, don't do that. So it's some good back and forth, and sometimes you think you're the funniest person in the room, and it's always good to get some feedback on it before you put it live.
Awesome. So we have folks saying that they will definitely read that blog post if you put it up. Meme-led marketing. I wish the acronym for that wasn't MLM, but I'm sure us marketers will come up with better acronyms for that, right? All right. If there are any other questions, feel free to post it in the Q&A. If not, Blair, it's been really great hosting you and going through this conversation. Where can people find you, Blair? Just let us know, and we'll pop that in the link and in all our follow-up content.
Cool. Yeah, I'll get that all over to you. I think I put some links in my profile. I've never used AirMeet before, so hopefully you guys can check those out. But really want to thank you, Chara, for having me, and to the Revenue Hero for always having the best support and a great product. And really appreciate your time. And yeah, just thanks again.
Awesome. For everybody who joined in, thanks for joining in. This was Masters of Revenue Demand Gen edition and our last edition. Blair, thanks for helping us close this out. We'll keep you all posted in terms of what else we come up with for fun events like these. All right. Have a great day, folks.